March 5, 2013, Caracas, Venezuela. Hugo Chávez is dead. In the presidential palace, the air is thick with incense and uncertainty as Nicolás Maduro, Chávez's chosen successor, stands before a nation still in mourning. Outside, supporters chant the name of a man who built his legacy by defying the United States. Inside, Maduro understands something most of the crowd does not yet grasp: the revolution he has inherited is already running out of oxygen. This is where today's conflict between Venezuela and America truly begins. Not with tanks or missiles, but with absence. The absence of Chávez's charisma. The absence of money. The absence of trust. By 2014, global oil prices collapse. Venezuela, sitting on the world's largest proven oil reserves, should have been protected. Instead, decades of mismanagement hollow out PDVSA, the state oil company. Refineries rust. Production falls. Power cuts spread across cities once lit all night. Ordinary Venezuelans begin lining up for bread, medicine, insulin. The revolution promised dignity. Reality delivers hunger. In Washington, the situation is watched with growing alarm. The Obama administration imposes targeted sanctions in 2015, aimed at officials accused of corruption and human rights abuses. Maduro calls it imperial aggression. For the United States, it is framed as accountability. For Venezuelans on the street, it is just another tightening knot around daily life. January 23, 2019, Caracas. Juan Guaidó steps onto a platform and declares himself interim president. Within minutes, the United States recognizes him. So do dozens of allied governments. The message is unmistakable: Washington no longer considers Maduro legitimate. For Maduro, this is no longer economic pressure. This is an existential threat. He turns inward and outward at the same time. Inward, with arrests, surveillance, and force. Outward, toward Russia, China, Iran, and Cuba, nations willing to trade money, fuel, and security expertise for loyalty and leverage against the United States. America escalates. Sanctions now target Venezuela's oil exports directly, cutting off the regime's primary source of hard currency. The intent is clear: force political change without firing a shot. The consequence is brutal. Venezuela's economy contracts by more than 70% over the decade. Millions flee across borders. This becomes one of the largest migration crises in modern history, with repercussions felt from Colombia to New York City. And yet, Maduro does not fall. February 24, 2022, Ukraine. Russia invades. Global energy markets convulse overnight. Suddenly, Washington is looking at Caracas through a different lens. With Russian oil sanctioned, Venezuela's reserves no longer look like a problem. They look like a potential solution. Quiet talks begin. Sanctions are selectively eased in 2023 to allow limited oil exports under strict conditions. The White House frames it as pragmatism. Critics call it hypocrisy. Maduro calls it victory. For the first time in years, American companies are allowed back into Venezuelan oil fields carefully, temporarily, conditionally. But the underlying conflict does not disappear. Elections in Venezuela remain tightly controlled. Opposition leaders are barred or arrested. When promised reforms fail to materialize, the United States snaps sanctions back in 2024, citing broken commitments. The cycle resumes: pressure, negotiation, return. But the underlying conflict does not disappear. Elections in Venezuela remain tightly controlled. Opposition leaders are barred or arrested. When promised reforms fail to materialize, the United States snaps sanctions back in 2024, citing broken commitments. The cycle resumes: pressure, negotiation, retreat, return. Today, the relationship exists in a permanent state of tension. The United States sees Venezuela as a destabilizing authoritarian state aligned with America's adversaries. Venezuela sees the United States as the architect of its suffering and the gatekeeper to its recovery. Between them stand millions of Venezuelans caught in the gravity of forces far larger than themselves. In Caracas, Maduro still speaks the language of resistance. In Washington, officials speak the language of democracy and leverage. But on the ground, mothers still search for medicine. Migrants still walk north. Oil still flows, just enough to keep the system breathing, never enough to heal it. This is not a Cold War replay. It is something quieter and more exhausting. A struggle fought through sanctions, oil licenses, recognition, and denial. A relationship defined not by dialogue, but by pressure applied, released, and applied again. And for now, it does not end with a declaration. It simply continues, unresolved, shaping lives long after the headlines move on.